Leader of the DA, John Steenhuisen, says political parties in the GNU must come up with a mechanism to ensure that the planning of the budget is discussed by all stakeholders. Steenhuisen was responding to Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's announcement that he's reversing the 0.5 VAT increase. International Editor Sophie Mokoena spoke to Steenhuisen on this and other issues. Take a listen.
Well, we're obviously delighted. It's what we've been calling for right from the beginning. We've made the point at the beginning of this process that you don't need to raise VAT in order to pass the budget. There are other mechanisms. We put on the table those mechanisms. No doubt these are the same mechanisms that we regurgitated by some of these other late arrivals to the VAT fight. But nonetheless, we're delighted. I think that South Africans can breathe a sigh of relief, particularly those South Africans, the millions of them that are struggling to keep their head above water. This is good news for South Africa. And of course, no doubt, Treasury jumping before it was pushed with that court case. I think anybody who saw that court case and watched the proceedings in court would have known it was not a good day for Treasury in court. And that's also why there's been a reach out around an out-of-court settlement on that particular case. In a coalition, you have to listen to all the voices around the table. You can't come and say it's our way or the highway. No party in the GNU has a majority. We are all minority parties. Therefore, we have to work together. I think the focus now needs to be within the GNU on how we find mechanisms to deal with disagreements without them becoming public blowouts. It's going to require maturity. It's going to require cool heads to sit down. It is completely inconceivable that you have a 10-party coalition that's going to agree on everything all of the time. I think we need to find more mature ways to deal with each other within the GNU around how we resolve these conflicts. We could have avoided this whole debacle had the proposals that we put on the table 8 weeks ago been seriously considered. Instead, we were told, including in the minister's own court papers, that there was no alternative to VAT. Well, it now turns out that's not the case, as we said from the beginning, and there are alternatives to VAT, and we look forward to playing our role in determining what those are.
Clearly, the relationship will never be the same. A member of the GNU taking a member of the GNU, or the GNU, put bluntly, to court.
Well, we took Parliament to court, because you may remember that
But at the end of the day, the contestation is around the budget. The
Correct.
GNU member taking the very same government to court. That is why you had Parliament and government having to respond, the government you belong to.
Yes, of course. But, I mean, this was a matter of due process. There are the money laws bills that determine how legislation is passed in South Africa and the procedures that must be followed. And that was the Part A attack on this particular decision, which we are very confident will win. The Part B attack is on what we regard as a constitutional lacuna around the powers of the Finance Minister to be able to determine a VAT rate. And the Finance Minister, under the current law, could put VAT up by 25%, and Parliament has no say on it. And that's what we're saying needs to be reviewed by the courts, and we need to fix it, because we are in a new era of budgeting. It's not one party determining the budget, Treasury coming and saying this is what's going to happen. There now needs to be consensus building around it. And I really hope that we are going to be able to find consensus so that we can use the majority that the GNU has to pass all the budget instruments. Remember, we've still got DORA, we've still got the money laws, money rates amendment bill that's got to come to Parliament. And now there's going to have to be a new fiscal framework that's voted upon. All of these things are going to require a majority. And so there does need to be, I think, far more consensus on how we arrive at these decisions going forward.
Shortfall, how are you going to deal with the shortfall? Because removing VAT, it's not going to be something that's going to help in terms of the shortfall.
Well, I think what you need to do is to put it into context. The money that would have been raised by the VAT increase amounts to 0.7% of the entire budget. Now, if you can't find 0.7% of savings in this multi-trillion rand budget, then there's something wrong with the accountancy. I'm convinced there are savings here. We've put on the table a number of areas where there are savings, and we will again do so because we want to play a constructive role in getting a credible, funded budget on the table that's going to allow us to help grow the economy and create jobs.
Clearly, the parties that supported the budget they are likely going to be accommodated in the government of national unity. And from day one, President Ramaphosa, after elections, he had invited all the parties.
Well, the statement of intent, which is the formation of the GNU, says very clearly that if new parties are brought on board, there has to be agreement by the parties that are signatories. We've not been formally approached. However, I would say that if there were moves to remove the DA from the GNU, I think that given the current geopolitical environment, that it would be a mistake.
Not removal of the DA, but bringing in those parties in government. And secondly, remember, it's the prerogative of the president to appoint and release ministers.
Of course, but remember the government is formed on the basis of the statement of intent.
No, but the Constitution is the guiding document in terms of how the country should be handled, be led, or how you run the government. The president has got a prerogative, according to the Constitution, to appoint or to relieve ministers. The statement of intent, it's a political agreement. It's neither an act of parliament nor a constitutional obligation with separation of powers. I'm sure you understand that clearly.
Yes, of course, but remember the president himself was elected on the basis of the statement of intent.
The appointment of the president and the election of the president, it was done in parliament, an independent arm of state, and there was agreement to elect him. He's now the head of state. The Constitution says the president has a prerogative to appoint or to relieve the ministers.
But the statement of intent is also very clear.
But the statement of intent, it's not an act, it's not a constitution. I'm saying the statement of intent, it's not an act of parliament. Secondly, it's not a constitutional imperative.
Yes, but if the statement of intent is torn up, then you don't have a GNU. And then we're released from any obligation in motions of no confidence, in whatever happens before Parliament. We'll be released from those obligations. And I think that you will also know that the statement of intent talks about proportionality in the cabinet seats. Where are the cabinet seats that are going to be given to other people going to come from? Are you going to take from other parties and give away? Is the ANC going to give up some of their seats? Remember, all of these things are a delicate negotiation, just like any coalition in the world. In Germany, Japan, many of the other countries, it's based on the coalition agreement. The German government fell over a fallout in the budget. The Japanese government is negotiating around a budget. But all of these essentially at the end of the day come back to the agreement between the parties. You can't just simply tear up the statement of intent. It is the very basis and foundation. And the president's actions would have to be determined of that. Of course, he appoints and disappoints ministers, but this is not the unfettered and unconstrained position that you had when your party had a majority. The ANC is now a 39% party, and they have to govern with others. And that governing arrangement is done on the basis of the statement of intent.
And finally, let's talk about Ukraine. Quite a critical meeting, particularly for agriculture, when you look at issues of grain and, of course, the issue of fertilizers, not forgetting new markets with the current challenge with the United States of America. From your department, what will be points of interest?
So obviously points of interest, as you've said rightly, new market, citrus and fruits, a lot of interest from them, red meat and beef products and sheep. They're looking at how they could become a hub in Europe as well for the distribution of South African beef and the like. Also, a huge opportunity for us to have access to fertilizers. You would know that fertilizer prices in South Africa have gone up 300% in recent years. The higher the input costs are, the higher the cost of food is. So if we're able to get access to good fertilizer at a good price, it's going to help lower the input costs for our farmers and farm workers around the country to be able to be more cost effective in what they're doing, and hopefully lead to a lowering the prices of food. And then, of course, on certain seasons, we do need to import grain. I think we're heading for a bumper crop this year, and we're looking to export more than we import, but there are balancing imports that we do. And of course, as one of the grain baskets of the world, Ukraine makes a lot of sense for us to talk to.
Still on Ukraine, you visited Kyiv, when you were the leader of the official opposition. And at that time, you were critical in terms of the non-aligned stand taken by the current ANC, at that time government. And now you are together in this government. And there's constant attack on South Africa's position in relation to engaging both countries, that is Russia and Ukraine. And at that time, you wanted South Africa not to engage Russia. Now you are in the government of national unity. This issue is also going to be discussed by President Ramaphosa. On the other hand, you have Russia that has got reservations about this meeting, and also America, the country that is quite critical for your party in terms of the trade relations.
Well, let me just say, when I first visited Ukraine, South Africa's stance at that time was anything but non-aligned. That stance was very much pro-Russia.
No, it was aligned. They did emphasize, and we kept doing that story. The president even visited Kyiv and Moscow.
But only after a number of months had taken place. But look, I think that what we have now is an opportunity for South Africa, as one of the leading countries in the global south, to use this platform and our leverage to play a role in bringing peace in that particular region. South Africa, given its position in BRICS and in a variety of other organizations, clearly has a relationship with Russia. And I think that we have an opportunity now to use those ties to be able to do precisely what President Ramaphosa is seeking to do, which is to bring peace to the region. And I think it's very brave that the President is making this move. And I think that it's also helpful that you've got a country in the global south that's outside of the global north dynamics of the conflict, that is able to work towards brokering some sort of peace that's going to lead to a resolution in Ukraine.